The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Judge Margaret Thornton, a stern woman in her late 50s with a reputation for being unforgiving, peered down at the defendant over her glasses. Her lips curled into a faint smirk as she addressed him. "Mr. DeShawn Williams," she began, her voice dripping with condescension, "you have chosen to represent yourself in this case. Grand theft auto and resisting arrest are serious charges. Are you sure you do not want a real attorney? This is not a game, young man." DeShawn, an 18-year-old black teenager, stood up. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his ill-fitting suit, a hand-me-down from his older brother. He looked like any other teenager caught up in trouble, nervous, out of place, and utterly unprepared. The gallery of spectators chuckled softly, and even the prosecutor, a seasoned attorney with a sharp suit and sharper tongue, could not hide his amusement. But DeShawn's voice, when he spoke, was steady. "Your Honor, I understand the gravity of the situation. I have reviewed the evidence, and I am confident in my ability to defend myself." The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Confidence is one thing, Mr. Williams. Competence is another. Let us see how far your self-taught legal skills take you." The prosecutor, Mr. Harrison, stood up, smoothing his tie. "Your Honor, the state is ready to present its case. We have overwhelming evidence against the defendant, including eyewitness testimony and video footage. This should be an open and shut case." DeShawn's heart raced, but he kept his face calm. He knew what was coming next. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, studying every detail of the case, every legal precedent, every loophole. He was not just fighting for his freedom, he was fighting to expose the flaws in a system that had already written him off. As the prosecutor began his opening statement, DeShawn's mind raced. He glanced at the jury, a mix of skeptical faces, and then at the judge, who was already doodling on her notepad, clearly bored. They all thought this was a waste of time. They thought he was just another kid in over his head. But DeShawn was about to prove them wrong. The prosecutor, Mr. Harrison, began his case with confidence. He called his first witness, Officer Martinez, the arresting officer. Martinez, a burly man with a no-nonsense attitude, took the stand and recounted the night of the arrest. "Your Honor," Martinez began, "on the night in question, I received a call about a stolen vehicle matching the description of a black sedan. When I arrived at the scene, I saw the defendant attempting to hotwire the car. I approached him, identified myself as an officer, and ordered him to stop. Instead, he fled on foot, leading to a brief chase before I apprehended him." DeShawn listened carefully, his eyes narrowing as he scribbled notes on a legal pad. When it was his turn to cross-examine, he stood up, his nervous demeanor replaced by a calm, focused intensity. "Officer Martinez," DeShawn began, his voice steady, "you said you saw me attempting to hotwire the car. Can you describe exactly what you saw?" Martinez hesitated for a moment. "I saw you leaning into the driver's side window, holding what appeared to be a tool. You were fumbling with the wires." DeShawn nodded. "And how far away were you when you observed this?" "About 20 feet, Martinez replied. DeShawn paused, letting the answer hang in the air. 20 feet, in the dark, and you are certain you saw me holding a tool and fumbling with wires?" Martinez shifted uncomfortably. "Yes." DeShawn turned to the judge. "Your Honor, may I approach the witness?" The judge, now slightly more interested, nodded. "Proceed." DeShawn walked up to the stand and handed Martinez a photograph. "Officer, this is a photo of the car in question. Can you point out where the wires are located?" Martinez frowned, studying the photo. "They are inside the dashboard." "Exactly," DeShawn said, turning to the jury. "The wires are inside the dashboard, not visible from outside the car. So how could Officer Martinez have seen me fumbling with wires through a closed window from 20 feet away in the dark?" The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. The prosecutor stood up, objecting. "Your Honor, this is speculation. The officer's testimony is based on his observations." DeShawn did not wait for the judge to respond. "Your Honor, if the prosecution's case relies on observations that are physically impossible, then their entire narrative falls apart." The judge leaned forward, her earlier smirk replaced by a look of curiosity. "Overruled. Continue, Mr. Williams." DeShawn turned back to Martinez. "Officer, you also mentioned that I fled when you approached. Did you identify yourself as an officer before chasing me?" Martinez hesitated again. "I believe I did." DeShawn raised an eyebrow. "You believe? Is it not standard procedure to clearly identify yourself before pursuing a suspect? Yes, but Martinez started. Thank you, officer. DeShawn interrupted, cutting him off. No further questions. As Martinez stepped down, the jury exchanged glances. The cracks in the prosecution's case were beginning to show. The prosecutor called his next witness, Miss Johnson, the owner of the stolen car. She was a middle-aged woman with a stern expression, clearly upset about the ordeal. She took the stand and recounted her story. Your Honor, she began, I parked my car outside my house that night. When I woke up the next morning, it was gone. I reported it stolen, and later that day the police found it with the defendant inside. DeShawn listened intently, his mind racing. When it was his turn to cross-examine, he approached the stand with a calm demeanor. Mrs. Johnson, DeShawn began, you said your car was stolen that night. Did you see anyone take it? No, she replied. I was asleep. DeShawn nodded. And when the police found the car, was there any damage to it? Broken windows? Forced locks? Mrs. Johnson frowned. No, the car was intact. DeShawn turned to the jury. So the car was stolen without any signs of forced entry. How do you think the thief got in? Mrs. Johnson hesitated. I do not know. Maybe they had a key. DeShawn raised an eyebrow. A key? Do you know how many people have access to your car keys? Just me and my son, she replied. DeShawn paused, letting the answer sink in. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. No further questions. As Mrs. Johnson stepped down, DeShawn turned to the judge. Your Honor, I would like to call my first witness, Marcus Johnson, Mrs. Johnson's son. The prosecutor stood up, objecting. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The defense did not disclose this witness. DeShawn responded calmly. Your Honor, Marcus Johnson's testimony is crucial to understanding the full context of this case. The prosecution has had ample opportunity to investigate. The judge considered for a moment, then nodded. Overruled. Call your witness. Marcus Johnson, a tall man with a nervous demeanor, took the stand. DeShawn began his questioning. Mr. Johnson, do you own a black sedan? Yes, he replied. And do you have access to the keys? Yes. DeShawn nodded. On the night in question, did you lend your car to anyone? Marcus hesitated, glancing at his mother. I lent it to my cousin Jamal. He needed it for a job interview. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Mrs. Johnson looked shocked. DeShawn pressed on. So your car was not stolen. You lent it to your cousin. Is that correct? Marcus nodded. Yes. DeShawn turned to the jury. So the car was not stolen. It was borrowed. And yet the prosecution is trying to convict me for grand theft auto based on a false premise. The prosecutor stood up, flustered. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. The defendant was still found in the car without permission. DeShawn did not wait for the judge to respond. Your Honor, if the car was not stolen, then the entire charge of grand theft auto is baseless. The prosecution's case is built on a lie. The judge leaned back, clearly intrigued. Continue, Mr. Williams. DeShawn turned back to Marcus. One last question. Did you inform the police that you had lent the car to your cousin? Marcus shook his head. No, I did not think it was important. DeShawn nodded. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. No further questions. As Marcus stepped down, the courtroom was in an uproar. The prosecution's case was unraveling, and DeShawn was just getting started. The prosecutor's confidence was crumbling, but the most damaging evidence was still to come. What DeShawn revealed next would expose the entire system's failures and change everything. The prosecutor, now visibly flustered, called his next witness, Detective Roberts, the lead investigator on the case. Roberts, a seasoned detective with a calm demeanor, took the stand and began his testimony. Your Honor, Roberts began. We have video footage from a nearby security camera that shows the defendant entering the vehicle on the night in question. This footage clearly places him at the scene. DeShawn's heart raced. He had anticipated this. The video was the prosecution's strongest piece of evidence, but DeShawn had spent hours analyzing it. He knew there was more to it than met the eye. When it was his turn to cross-examine, DeShawn stood up, his confidence growing. Detective Roberts, DeShawn began, you mentioned that the video footage shows me entering the vehicle. Can you describe what exactly is visible in the footage? Roberts nodded. The footage shows a figure approaching the car, opening the door, and getting inside. The figure matches the defendant's description. DeShawn paused, letting the answer hang in the air. Detective, does the footage show the person's face clearly? Roberts hesitated. No, the footage is grainy, and the person's face is not clearly visible. DeShawn nodded. So the footage does not conclusively identify me as the person entering the car. Is that correct? Roberts shifted uncomfortably. That is correct, but the figure's clothing and build match your description. DeShawn turned to the judge. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? The judge nodded. Proceed. DeShawn walked up to the stand and handed Roberts a document. Detective, this is a still image from the security footage. Can you point out where the figure's face is clearly visible? Roberts studied the image, then shook his head. As I said, the face is not clearly visible. DeShawn turned to the jury. So the prosecution's key piece of evidence does not conclusively identify me as the person in the video. Is it not possible that the person in the footage is someone else? The prosecutor stood up, objecting. Your Honor, this is speculation. The defendant is clearly trying to mislead the jury. DeShawn did not wait for the judge to respond. Your Honor, if the prosecution's evidence does not conclusively prove my involvement, then their case is based on assumptions, not facts. The judge leaned forward, her earlier curiosity now fully engaged. Overruled. Continue, Mr. Williams. DeShawn turned back to Roberts. Detective, did you investigate other leads? For example, did you consider that the person in the footage might be Marcus Johnson's cousin, Jamal? Roberts hesitated. No, we did not. We focused on the defendant based on the initial evidence. DeShawn nodded. Thank you, Detective. No further questions. As Roberts stepped down, the jury exchanged glances. The prosecution's case was crumbling, and DeShawn was systematically dismantling it. The courtroom was buzzing with tension. The prosecution's case was unraveling, and DeShawn's confidence was growing. But the judge, still skeptical, leaned forward and addressed DeShawn directly. Mr. Williams, she said, her tone sharp, you have done an impressive job so far, but let us not forget the charge of resisting arrest. Even if the grand theft auto charge is questionable, you still fled from an officer. How do you explain that? DeShawn took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been preparing for. Your Honor, I would like to call my next witness, Jamal Washington, the cousin of Marcus Johnson. The prosecutor shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The defense is introducing new witnesses without prior notice. This is a blatant attempt to disrupt the proceedings. DeShawn remained calm. Your Honor, Jamal Washington's testimony is critical to understanding the full context of the resisting arrest charge. The prosecution has had every opportunity to investigate this case thoroughly. If they missed key witnesses, that is not my fault. The judge narrowed her eyes, considering DeShawn's argument. After a long pause, she nodded. Overruled. Call your witness. Jamal Washington, a young man in his early 20s with a nervous demeanor, took the stand. He avoided eye contact with the prosecutor, clearly uncomfortable. DeShawn began his questioning. Jamal, DeShawn said, his tone gentle but firm, on the night in question, did you borrow your cousin's car? Jamal nodded. Yeah, I needed it for a job interview the next morning. DeShawn continued. And what happened after you used the car? Jamal hesitated, glancing at the prosecutor who was glaring at him. I parked the car near my apartment and left it there. But when I came back later, it was gone. I thought it got towed or something. DeShawn nodded. So you did not report it missing? Jamal shook his head. No, I did not want to get in trouble for borrowing it without asking properly. DeShawn turned to the jury. So the car was not stolen. It was borrowed by Jamal, who left it unattended. And when I found it, I was simply trying to return it to its rightful location. The prosecutor stood up, his face red with frustration. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. The defendant still fled from an officer. DeShawn did not wait for the judge to respond. He turned back to Jamal. One more question, Jamal. Did you see anyone near the car when you left it? Jamal hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, there was this guy hanging around. He looked suspicious. I did not think much of it at the time, but I think he might have been trying to break into cars in the area. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. DeShawn pressed on. And did you tell the police about this man? Jamal shook his head. No, I did not think it was important. DeShawn turned to the judge. Your Honor, this testimony proves that the car was not stolen, and it raises serious doubts about the prosecution's case. As for the resisting arrest charge, I would like to explain what really happened that night. The judge leaned back, her earlier skepticism replaced by genuine interest. Proceed, Mr. Williams. DeShawn took a deep breath. Your Honor, when Officer Martinez approached me, he did not identify himself clearly. He was in plain clothes, and he did not show a badge immediately. I thought he was the suspicious man Jamal mentioned, trying to rob me. That is why I ran. I was not resisting arrest. I was trying to protect myself from what I believed was a criminal. The courtroom fell silent. The jury exchanged glances, and even the prosecutor seemed momentarily speechless. DeShawn had not only dismantled the grand theft auto charge, but also provided a plausible explanation for the resisting arrest charge. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. DeShawn's revelation had shifted the dynamics entirely. The judge, now fully engaged, leaned forward and addressed the prosecutor. Mr. must appear at pocket to mork. Mr. My Fargo. One forward will store Jane. Harrison, she said, her tone firm. Do you have any further evidence to present, or do you wish to rest your case? The prosecutor, visibly flustered, stood up. Your Honor, the prosecution rests. However, we maintain that the defendant's actions, regardless of his explanations, warrant a conviction. He was found near a vehicle that was reported stolen, and he fled from an officer. These facts cannot be ignored. The judge nodded, then turned to DeShawn. Mr. Conaby Vitambayat Ferntikip Beat Sork Pot Mestelbaud. Williams, do you have any further witnesses or evidence to present? DeShawn stood up, his confidence unwavering. Yes, Your Honor. I would like to call one final witness, myself. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. The judge raised an eyebrow. You wish to testify on your own behalf? DeShawn nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I believe my testimony will clarify the remaining questions in this case. The judge considered for a moment, then nodded. Very well, proceed. DeShawn took the stand, sworn in, and began his testimony. He spoke clearly and confidently, his earlier nervousness completely gone. Your Honor, members of the jury, DeShawn began. I want to start by saying that I never intended to break the law. On the night in question, I was walking home from my job at the community center when I noticed a car parked awkwardly on the side of the road. The door was slightly open, and I could see the keys were still in the ignition. I thought someone might have abandoned it or left it in a hurry, so I decided to check if the owner was nearby. DeShawn paused, letting his words sink in. But when I leaned in to look for any identification or contact information, I heard someone shouting behind me. I turned around and saw a man running toward me. He did not identify himself as an officer clearly. He was not in uniform, and he did not show a badge right away. Given the neighborhood I was in and the stories I had heard about people being robbed or attacked, I thought he was trying to harm me, so I ran. The jury listened intently, their earlier skepticism replaced by curiosity. DeShawn continued, his voice growing stronger. I did not know he was a police officer until he caught me and put me in handcuffs. When I was arrested, I was scared and confused. I did not understand why I was being charged with grand theft auto when I had not stolen anything. I did not understand why I was being treated like a criminal when I was just trying to do the right thing. DeShawn's voice grew passionate. That is when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I studied the law, reviewed the evidence, and prepared my defense. Not just for myself, but for anyone who has ever been wrongly accused by a system that does not always get it right. His voice resonated through the courtroom. I may not have a law degree, but I have proven today that with determination, knowledge, and a commitment to justice, anyone can stand up for what is right. This case is not just about me. It is about accountability. It is about making sure that the justice system works for everyone, regardless of their background or the color of their skin. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge seemed moved by DeShawn's words. After a moment, she spoke. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Does the prosecution have any questions for the defendant? The prosecutor stood up, clearly struggling to regain his footing. Mr. Williams, you claim you did not know Officer Martinez was a police officer, but is it not true that you were simply trying to avoid getting caught in a crime? DeShawn shook his head firmly. No, sir. I had no reason to believe I was doing anything wrong. I was trying to help, not hurt anyone. If Officer Martinez had identified himself properly from the beginning, none of this would have happened. I would have gladly cooperated and explained what I was doing. The prosecutor sat down, defeated. The judge turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have heard the evidence and the testimony. It is now your duty to deliberate and reach a verdict. We will reconvene tomorrow morning for your decision. After hours of deliberation, the jury was ready to deliver their verdict. What they decided would not only determine DeShawn's fate, but send a powerful message about justice, prejudice, and the courage to fight for what is right. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Spectators, reporters, and even a few legal scholars had gathered to hear the verdict. DeShawn sat at the defense table, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. He had done everything he could. Now it was up to the jury. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" she asked. The foreman, a middle-aged black woman with a serious expression, stood up. "We have, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Please read the verdict." The foreman unfolded the paper in her hands and cleared her throat. "On the charge of grand theft auto, we find the defendant not guilty." A wave of murmurs swept through the courtroom. DeShawn let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. The foreman continued, "On the charge of resisting arrest, we find the defendant not guilty." The courtroom erupted. Some cheered, others gasped, and a few shook their heads in disbelief. DeShawn's eyes welled up with tears, but he kept his composure. The judge banged her gavel, calling for order. "Order in the court! Order!" she shouted. When the room quieted, she turned to DeShawn. "Mr. Williams, you have been acquitted of all charges. You are free to go." DeShawn stood up, his legs trembling slightly. "Thank you, Your Honor." As he turned to leave, the judge stopped him. "Mr. Williams, wait." DeShawn paused, looking back at her. The judge's stern expression had softened completely. "What you did here today, it was remarkable. You have not only defended yourself, but also exposed flaws in our system that need to be addressed. I hope you will consider pursuing a career in law. We need more people like you, people who are not afraid to fight for justice." DeShawn nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Thank you, Your Honor. I will definitely think about it." As he walked out of the courtroom, he was met with a mix of reactions. Reporters swarmed him, shouting questions, but DeShawn kept walking. Outside, the sun was shining, and the air felt fresher than it had in weeks. "DeShawn!" a voice called out. He turned to see Jamal Washington approaching, looking sheepish. "I just wanted to say I am sorry, man. I did not mean to get you caught up in all this." DeShawn shook his head. "It is not your fault, Jamal. The system failed both of us. But maybe now, things will start to change." Jamal nodded, then hesitated. "So what is next for you?" DeShawn looked up at the sky, a sense of purpose filling him. "I think I am going to law school. If I can do this without a degree, imagine what I could do with one." Jamal grinned. "You are going to change the world, man." DeShawn laughed, a genuine, heartfelt laugh. "Maybe, but for now, I am just glad it is over." As he walked away, DeShawn felt a sense of empowerment he had never known before. He had faced the system head-on and won. But more than that, he had proven that knowledge, determination, and a willingness to fight for what is right could make a difference. And for DeShawn Williams, this was just the beginning.